I'm sure you've heard the many covert operations, MKUltra, Project Stargate, and a myriad of others. But what about a secret operation that took place in your elementary school? Does that sound far-fetched? Because to be completely honest, I thought that too. But you don't have to take my word for it, because I brought the receipts. If you went to preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school, or even college in the United States anytime after the 1930s, this information is relevant to you because you might have been part of a secret experimentation that you knew nothing about. You don't have to fall under any demographic, you didn't have to participate in certain classes. They tested as many children as they could. As I mentioned, I will be showing you the documents. But first, let me explain to you how I stumbled upon this information. Originally, I set out to make a video about the GATE theory. If you've never heard about it, GATE is an acronym for Gifted and Talented Education. These school programs usually serve the kindergarten to 12th grade, and former participants of these programs are.
We know that the Gifted and Talented TAG, GATE, GT program, whatever you want to call it, that was conducted in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and maybe into the 2000s, we know that they were experimenting on us.
GATE, the nefarious Gifted and Talented program. People across the internet seem to be remembering. Don't think this has been mentioned on this sub before. I recently came across some people on the internet, especially on Reddit and TikTok, claiming to have elementary school memories of these GATE, Gifted and Talented programs, that involved several exercises. The most commonly mentioned being wearing clanky 90s headphones and listening to audio clips, supposedly brainwashing them to be susceptible to out-of-body experiences/lucid dreaming. Different people are claiming to remember similar things, such as an exercise matching shapes together or reading a book upside down. One thing they all have in common is their tendency to forget most of or all of what happened in the program until later in their adult lives. Certain accounts even recall them consuming some kind of pink drink, which was said to be a drug for the memory loss. Most people mainly just remember resenting going to the program or begging their parents to let them pull out of it. Proponents of this strange story are convinced it was some kind of CIA experiment, ran from the late 80s to early 2000s. Has anyone here shared similar experiences or encountered similar stories? So naturally, I was intrigued. Former participants of Gifted and Talented programs claim that they were instructed to drink a mysterious pink liquid.
And then the last thing I can remember from this is drinking out of a paper cup this pink, thick, chalky liquid. I think they told us it was a fluoride drink to make us think it was for our teeth or something. But now I'm currently crashing out.
They claim they don't remember what they did within the program.
I've seen multiple videos recently about being in the Gifted and Talented program when you were in school, and how a bunch of us don't really remember what happened in there. And now that I think about it, I don't either.
And the things that they do remember are strange and non-academic, to say the least.
Some people literally remember using Zener cards, which are used to train and test psychic abilities.
I tell my husband so much about my time in the Gifted and Talented program. So she would have us all lay flat on our backs and close our eyes. And then she would tell us to visualize 2 or 3 different things depending on the day. Sometimes it was visualizing our own bodies or spirits leaving our bodies and looking down at ourselves. And then she would teach us to look for spirit guides and to talk to them.
But what exactly would be the point of these experimentations? Well,
if you're an 80s, 90s, early 2000s baby and you were in the GATE program, that's Gifted and Talented Education Program, I need to hear about your experience, because I went down the rabbit hole last night after I did a story on liminal spaces and back rooms, and a bunch of people were commenting like, I wonder if this is related to the GATE program, which some people think was a government program ran by the CIA to find children with telepathic or psychic abilities.
former participants of gifted and talented programs not only believe that they were tested for psychic abilities within these programs, but they also believe that they were selected for these programs based upon criteria that might indicate that they are psychic or prone to psychic phenomena. The internet is overflowing with anecdotal accounts, voicing the idea that psychic testing occurred in the classroom. This theory has been entirely anecdotal and speculation. But what if I told you that I found the proof? The proof about secret experimentations in US classrooms was hiding in CIA documents about psychic children from China. In 1978, China experienced a phenomena where children claimed to possess psychic and supernatural abilities, such as, allegedly, being able to read the contents of crumbled papers by holding the crumbled paper to their ears. They could read crumbled papers that they stuffed underneath their armpits, and were even able to read the contents of crumbled paper with their butts. No kidding. When I found out that the CIA had documents of their own research about these psychic children from China, well, shout out to Alex, because not too long after that, bingo. The CIA document is titled Human Paranormal Capabilities. It's a 94-page document from 1984 that was declassified on March 7, 2001. The documents mostly detail the observations about the psychic Chinese children. But turn to page 75, and there it is. The document details an experimentation in a Florida elementary school, and it states that the results were, quote, startling. Students in this experiment displayed results that were 86% better than the odds of chance. In fact, they loved testing in the classroom. The document states that the classroom is, quote, an extremely good place for ESP experiments. Let's slow it down a little bit. What is ESP? ESP is an acronym for extrasensory perception. ESP is also known as a sixth sense or cryptesthesia. It is a claim to paranormal ability pertaining to the reception of information that is not gained through the physical senses, but rather things sensed with the mind or intuition. The term extrasensory perception was coined by J.B. Rhine, a botanist from Duke University, to mark the presence of psychic abilities such as intuition, telepathy, clairvoyance, and other forms of sensory perception that go beyond the five senses. That document was a breakthrough in our investigation, but I didn't stop there. We investigated where those documents came from and who wrote it, and ended up finding a trove of documents that go into detail about the covert operations conducted in schools all over the US. Since at least 1937 to possibly the present day, students from preschool to college were tested in the classroom secretly. Documents show that some of the strongest psychic results have come from students with mental disabilities. Experimenters had access to student records, so they knew if you were creative, sucked at math, had behavioral issues, or moved to a different school. There are teachers out there that know about this because they participated. And if you think this is all about innocent guessing games, well, things only get more disturbing from here.
We'll return after these messages.
What's going on to all the cryptid cuties in the world? It is Daddy Candy here. At least that's what they call me everywhere, like literally, like even the DMV. If you guys want to help support the channel, head on over to my website, Cryptidcandy.store, grab a piece of merch such as my little Hatman t-shirt, the classic Hatman Paleta shirt. People love that shirt, by the way. Grab some hoodies, some drinkware, and a lot of other stuff over there for you to see, so check it out, Cryptidcandy.store. If not, then check out Patreon. I'm working on some Patreon exclusive videos, and I added some new perks, so if you want to look at my script, or if you want to take a sneak peek at those documents, then head on over to Patreon. Now finally, make sure you check out my Discord server, the Aerial Archives. We just reached 100 members, so we're doing big things over there. It's literally like the next big thing right now. And you know what they say, buy low, sell high, so get in now while it's low. Okay, enough shenanigans, let's get back to the video. Now we are going to circle back and examine the first document. But the first document is a mere drop in the ocean of documentation that we uncovered. Here is how we found the rest. The first inclination was to investigate the person who wrote the report. That wasn't too hard to find. Right at the top, we can see that it was written by an American author named L.E. Lyons. But there was one problem. L.E. Lyons doesn't exist. We quickly found out that L.E. Lyons was a pseudonym. In fact, this is the only publication we could find under that name. But right below that, it reads, Chapter 3, Advances in Parapsychology Research. We realized that the report we found was only a tiny glimpse of what is actually 10 entire volumes, called Advances in Parapsychological Research. The first volume was published in 1978, and the latest was published on February 23, 2021. The volumes were edited by Stanley Krippner, who was heavily involved in Project Stargate. Project Stargate was a CIA operation that investigated remote viewing and other psychic phenomena for the purpose of potential military and domestic intelligence applications. It had its beginnings in 1972, and it ran until 1995. Allegedly. Some believe it never really stopped. Experimenters kept private records of children that parents knew nothing about. They had access to children's school records. There are entire chapters dedicated to all the secret ways they experimented in the classroom. Some ways appeared entirely academic, such as memory games, word association tests, drawing tests, rocket launching games, and a lot more. They also loved using Zener cards or ESP cards in the classrooms. Imagery trips that involved meditation tapes. Thousands of classrooms, thousands of students, every and any age, year by year, decade by decade. The amount of documentation is overwhelming. The volumes reveal highly disturbing things, like the fact that not only did teachers know about these experimentations, but they often participated, whether they believed in psychic phenomena or not. Documents that detail hypnosis, guided imagery trips, out-of-body experiences, and even erotic photos used in classroom ESP experiments. Substances were also used in classroom experiments. Substances like sodium amytal, a barbiturate, known to cause hypnotic effects, and it also causes memory loss. So was sodium amytal the secret ingredient in the pink liquid that former gifted and talented students remember drinking? Is it a coincidence that sodium amytal is one of the substances used in MKUltra experiments? And why did experimenters express that they prefer to work with gifted subjects? Some documents refer to them as talented. Coincidence? And why did experimenters believe that the firstborn children were the most psychic? These are just some of the questions that we'll be answering in the upcoming series, where we deep dive into every volume, and where I show you why this is the darkest rabbit hole that no one knows about. Let's take a closer look at the first document. The page is titled A General Discussion of Parapsychology. Parapsychology is the study of alleged psychic phenomena which includes extrasensory perception, telepathy, precognition, clairvoyance, psychokinesis, also called telekinesis, and psychometry, and other paranormal claims. The document reads as follows. ESP experiments in schools. Much of the experiments carried out so far have shown the classroom is an extremely good place for ESP experiments. After results of experiments had first been reported from ESP labs, Florida elementary school teacher E. Bood noticed a report and conducted an experiment in her own class of 22 students. The night before the experiment, she made up a stack of cards numbered 1 through 10 to be drawn at random. The next day, she stood at the front of the classroom, sometimes at the back of the classroom, and every 4 or 5 seconds, she would concentrate on the number on a card. The students would write down their guesses. The results were startling. There were 371 correct answers and 2,870 guesses. This is 86% better than the odds of chance. This ratio is second highest of all experiments conducted in classrooms. The document does continue for 2 pages, specifically talking about classroom ESP experiments. Now, I'm not going to read the whole report line by line, but I'll give you a quick synopsis on each paragraph, and I'll link the report so you can read it fully for yourself as well. In 1953, a researcher from Holland was brought to the US by Duke University to conduct experiments with 23 classes of 5th and 6th graders and 17 classes of 7th and 8th graders. The younger students performed the best in this experiment, which were similar to the results of the experimentations he conducted in Holland. No further details about the experiment itself are provided. The following paragraph talks about how the success rate for ESP is based upon the student-teacher relationship. This is something that is echoed consistently in later volumes. The highest levels of ESP occur when the student likes the teacher and the teacher likes the student, and the lowest levels of ESP occur when the opposite is true. The report details an experiment with preschool students, ages 4 to 6.5. The experiments were conducted with unfamiliar students. The students didn't know the teacher, and the teacher didn't know the students. As expected, the results were not very good. Not even 1 class out of 10 achieved results better than the odds of chance. But in many of these experiments, the girls scored higher than the boys. Again, the report doesn't include details of the experiment itself. In an attempt to determine the subtle differences in levels of ESP between boys and girls, Dr. J. F. Freeman conducted experiments that took place over a number of years. The experiments were carried out with children with intellectual disabilities under the guidance of a teacher. The boys scored better than the girls, but for some reason, the teacher didn't like the girls. So the paragraph concludes stating that the attitude of the teacher influences the success rate of the students. I'm just going to go ahead and read this next paragraph. Because the effect of gender on ESP was unclear, Freeman gave a test to some 7th graders. The girls did clearly better than the boys on the word tests, and the boys did better than the girls on the space-related tests. However, when he gave different aptitude tests to some about to finish the 7th grade, some girls, a minority, did better on the space-related questions than they did on language questions, just as the boys did. On the other hand, some boys, a minority, did poorly on the aptitude test, but did the same as the girls in guessing pictures in a book. The difference is significant. However, it is more apt to say that it is a result of different stages of psychological development than it is to say that it is a difference between the sexes. The final paragraph pertaining to classroom experiments also aimed to find differences in ESP levels between sexes. The junior high school magazine reading material attached an ESP chart that asked students to fill it out and return it. More than 100,000 students responded. The results were the same as the odds of chance. The document states that some were, quote, psychically right and some were psychically wrong, whatever the hell that means. But the results basically averaged each other out. However, the report claims that through this large mass of data, inherent proof of ESP was discovered, and it was connected to the different sexes. The girls' success rate was clearly better than the odds of chance, while the boys' results were the same as chance. While results do fluctuate between boys and girls in different experiments, the report finds that girls tend to perform better than the odds of chance, and this becomes more noticeable in larger experiments. So who was behind these classroom experimentations? Well, it wasn't necessarily schools, but rather third parties that utilize schools. The first document was found in a CIA report, and the editor of Advances in Parapsychological Research has CIA ties. But we also see institutional names behind these experiments as well. This makes perfect sense. When the CIA conducted MKUltra, they didn't just show up as the CIA. They utilized institutions such as Princeton, Harvard, and many others to front the research, and we do see some of the usual suspects. So, can you take a guess? Experimenters tested everyone, in the sense that they didn't discriminate, but this didn't occur in every school, though it did happen very frequently. How they selected which school to conduct testing, I'm still trying to figure out. But still, there are some teachers out there that know about this. I'm not sure if they signed an NDA or what, but it's true. And it's one of the more disturbing aspects about this. I hope you guys are excited for the future videos where we deep dive into all of these volumes. Consider joining Patreon, buying some merch, or even just joining the Discord. I really put a lot of effort into providing you guys with content that is fresh and new, and I think we did that today. So, as always, I will see you in the next one.